Hey, I'm Melanie Johnson along with my co-host Jen Foster. We are both 13-time best-selling authors. We've published over 2,500 books and made all of our authors #1 bestsellers. We own Elite Online Publishing. If you want to become a best-selling author, look us up at eliteonlinepublishing.com. Now, welcome to the podcast that shares secrets from top industry experts that show you how to get lasting success and results. This is the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another great podcast. This is Melanie Johnson. I'm here along with Jen Foster. Hey, Jen, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How's everyone? It's a beautiful day.
It's always a beautiful day. You can always find sunshine in any day. That's I've been in Michigan lately and it's been gray. I forgot how gray Michigan can be in the wintertime. So I just make my own sunshine every day. Well, hey, welcome. And remember to subscribe to our podcast. We are going to dive deep into writing today. Now, of course, all of you know we own Elite Online Publishing. And if you don't, you know now, where we make all of our authors #1 bestsellers and work with them to use their book for their business. But so many successful people can't get over the hump of writing and getting past the fear of putting themselves out there and being vulnerable. We have an expert book writing coach today that's going to walk us through all of her tips and tricks on how to get your book done no matter what, to get amazing results and to get past that fear and have the great mindset to do it. So this comes by even if you're doing writing for social media, you're doing it for a newsletter, a blog. It's just getting yourself out there. You can have a little bit of fear. So today we are going to dive deep into the writer's success code. Ashley Mansour, she wrote the guide, a #1 bestseller. Welcome, Ashley. Thanks for coming to our show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Jen and Melanie. It's awesome to be here. I'm really excited to talk with you both.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit, Ashley, about how you got started in writing and how you got this international best-selling book that did you land a TV deal? There's all this crazy stuff going on. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So I feel like I, have always had the writer's blood in my body, coursing through my veins ever since I was really small, putting on plays and writing little mini books. And so when I got older, it was just natural that I, spent time wanting to put out a novel. But I actually had a really frustrating experience. I, spent 3 years on this book that just didn't go anywhere, got rejected over and over again. And it was really heart-wrenching actually, because, telling the story that I was so passionate about and then sending it out to friends who happen to be agents or editors or, somewhere in the industry. And they just came back and said, this is not publishable as it is. And that was the start of my writing journey. So I actually, from there kind of put the dream aside and I went off to work on other people's books, and so I went and worked for a startup company for 3 years and ironically headed up their publishing department to put out their books. And, I understood the system but I really did get a crash course in what works and why, and, how to actually create a book from start to finish and what goes into it. And then, I had the benefit of working with some really wonderful people in the creative side and getting to understand how do they do what they do consistently to get the results they want, not just to create a nice story, but also to create books and properties that could sell and would be commercial. And so, all of that in mind, I then the dream woke up again, and it was like kind of nagging at me, the dream to create my own books and tell my own stories. So, inevitably, I ended up back at the computer, staring at the blank page, kind of wondering how am I going to do this? And from that experience, my methodology, the TAP method, was born. Because, just out of that frustration of wanting to tell my story and know that it would go somewhere. And I promised myself, if you do this again, you're not spending 3 years on the book for it to go nowhere and just end up in the trash can. Like, that's not happening. So I really did have to be very deliberate about it. So that's where the methodology came from, is wanting the success and wanting to get my stories out there, but really not finding another framework to do that. And so that's where it came from. It's just a very natural evolution, really.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, being in the publishing business, we hear from authors all the time, I've been thinking about this book for 20 years. I've been thinking about it for 10 years. It's been in my head. And you're like, seriously? And you haven't like, well, I've written stuff, but I don't know. So what is the method? Take us and walk us through your method that can guarantee that they can get that book or screenplay out of their head and onto paper.
Oh yeah, such a great question. Well, the first thing that I really have built into the methodology over this last year since being in business and working with a ton of different authors is the mindset piece, is being able to, feel confident in what you're doing and really own your story that you want to tell. And you're right, Melanie, so many people come to the process with a tremendous amount of fear and hesitation, and what are people going to think, and do I have anything to say that's different from what's already out there and been said before. And so, a lot of the work is getting them comfortable with and confident with what they have to say, whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction. And I do serve both, both categories, which is, I guess, kind of unique in the space, but it's a lot of fun. And I really do have a soft spot for those fiction writers who have a fantastic story to tell, but they are tremendously afraid of rejection. I've been there. I know what it's like. And it can be devastating if you don't have kind of a foundation in place to move through the writing process. So that's really what the methodology is all about. The TAP method takes you from idea to the finished manuscript within 90 days. So there's really two parts to it. The first part would be, laying in the foundation strategically. So we spend 5 weeks in my programs doing that and making sure that you're set up to begin writing in the right way. So you start off on the right foot, which we hear so often, but people tend to just dive right into chapter 1 and then kind of hit the wall and go, I give up, I'm all out of steam. I've run out of steam. So those first 5 weeks are really just about preparing them for that journey of writing the book. So we go through 3 different phases. The first one is, so TAP stands for time, accountability, and process, which I really have found to be the 3 things that people do need to have under their belt as a strategic foundation before they go off and start writing. So when we talk about mastering time, it's really about understanding what you can do with your time. Like, how efficient can you be as a writer, and knowing how fast you write in a given period of time. So we use words per hour to see what your writing speed is, and then factor that into the size of the book you're trying to create. So, for example, if you're writing a 50,000 word book versus a 100,000 word book, it's going to feel a lot different as a journey. So we want to know what that looks like and prepare them adequately for the 50,000 work or the 80,000 word book, and just kind of set them up for success that way. So that's kind of the time piece.
I love that. I think that's great. It's kind of just like a math problem, it's like, let's figure this out, and then you'll know like where it is, instead of, like you said, you take a whole month and write all this stuff down, and then you get writer's block and you're stuck and you don't know what to do next.
Yes.
Then they know it's like, okay, it's going to take me 20 hours or 60 hours or 80 hours or whatever it is to write the book. Then they have that blocked out. And because they always say, like, how long does it take? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes. No, yes.
Yeah.
That's so true. What I find too is that when they go through the time piece, then they go, oh, okay, well, it's actually 40 hours. That's a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was here for 4,000 hours. And so we really, chunk down the book, and they can understand this is not a monumental task. It is totally possible. And when you awaken that possibility in somebody, the light kind of switches on, and they're able to see what they're able to do. So it's really empowering, I find, when we get through that first part.
Yeah, well, I think just the mindset part, like we always talk about mindset. When we did our first book writing retreat, we were like, okay, first you have to start with mindset, because you can't start writing if you don't have your mindset. And that time piece kind of puts you into that perspective. Because like you said, if you really feel like it's going to be 40,000 hours, you have that weight on you. But when you're like, it's 40 hours, then you're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah, exactly. And people relate it to their working week, sort of a 40-hour week, and they can really see this is doable. I can do this. So it's incredibly empowering. And then when you get into accountability, you're sort of layering in a really important element that a lot of people don't think about until it's kind of too late, which is your ideal reader or your audience, who the book is actually there to serve, which is just as important for fiction as it is for nonfiction. So, and many people think about it after the fact instead of right up front, where it really matters and can really hold you accountable and bring you back to the page where, you got to do the work. So I find that to be a really important layer too. I don't know, do you ladies find that that's also the case?
Yeah, because you got to have an audience of who. That's one of the things we do in our VIP day, where they, spend 8 hours with us, and it's the first thing we ask them: who is your ideal reader? And then turning it into one person, like, oh, they're 30 to 50 years old. They're maybe a guy, maybe a girl, and then we get it down to, it's my neighbor. It's Jim who lives next door. That's really my ideal reader. And so then you're writing the book just for Jim. You're writing the book just for that person, and it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, I just love that. I love that. As soon as you see they're a real human being you're writing for with emotions and aspirations and
Yeah.
hopes and dreams, it's like it becomes so much more immediate and so much more valuable because now you're compelled to tell the story for them instead of for sort of this, invisible avatar that you can't see or feel.
Exactly. It does feel different. Like if I say, well, I'm having a conversation with Ashley, it's more intimate versus if I'm having a conversation with 20,000 people on a big stage, right? It's just a different type of feeling.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And so we layer in that piece, and then people start to really feel at home in what they're doing, and they feel purposeful because they're actually serving another human. So that sense of purpose is also there to drive the writing. So that's really the A in TAP, the accountability part. And
Mhm.
then when we go over to P for process, it's really just about helping people move very smoothly through the writing process so that they understand that when you're in that drafting or composition phase, you don't need your editor's hat. That can wait. That can be over here. You don't need your publisher's hat. There's a lot of hats that authors try to wear, especially first time authors, that they can sort of put to the side. They don't need to be wearing all these hats when they're just drafting the book. So
Yeah, I think a lot of authors get stuck with that when they're writing because they'll stop and correct something or stop and, oh, let me rework that sentence again and again and again. And then it does take 40,000 hours because you're rewriting the book over and over again instead of just writing the book.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So the rewriting and the self-editing can be really destructive in many ways because it prevents you from crossing that finish line,
Mhm.
which once you do, you have something that can be worked through and edited and published. Without that finish line, my goodness, you're just kind of stuck in a hamster wheel going through the words, or the word salad, as one of my favorite editors likes to say, just toss in the word salad. And you're not actually finishing the actual piece. So yeah, it's pretty interesting that when you layer them all together and you have time, accountability, and process all lining up, people are just able to write so much faster and with joy instead of sort of this, hair pulling,
Yeah.
gut wrenching experience. It just doesn't have to be that way. So that's kind of what I believe about writing.
So give us a little more about the process part. So we've got our mindset going, we've got our avatar, our target audience, the accountability. So now, like, all right, how do I put the pieces together? I'm on that hamster wheel and all these ideas are still in my head.
Yeah, so the process piece really comes down to understanding the how the writing process works. So you've got your pre-writing phase, which is really important in stacking up how to
Mhm.
begin writing, and then when you're in the drafting phase, one of the things I like to teach is something called the Sandbox Method, which is you're just putting sand in the sandbox. You're not there to kind of shape or construct these massive sandcastles yet. You're just shoveling, right? You're just getting the words in the framework where they need to be chapter by chapter. And then you can leave the detail work for later. So it's really about helping them to see that
Mhm.
and get away from perfectionism as well. So yeah,
That's
perfectionism is one of the biggest pieces, as I'm sure you both know, and especially if you're serving really, overachievers or really, high profile A players, they like to, they like to get it right. But sometimes, being perfect the first go around is not the end goal. So we have to kind of let go of that a little bit and just let the writing process work for you. So, for example, being able to see that, the next step is to actually go away from the book and then allow somebody else to come in and give you that third party perspective. So that's where the editor can be really, really handy. And knowing that there's a time and place for that. And it's not when you're doing draft 1, right? It's not when you're sitting there writing chapter 2.
Yeah.
So.
So tell us what you say, like there's daily tricks that you can do to kickstart your writing, because there's so many people, I mean, we all are procrastinators in some way or another. So how do we keep going and having like, okay, I'm supposed to write today. I put it on my alarm at 8 a.m. I'm going to write for a half hour. How do we make sure that we do that? What are some of your tricks?
Yeah, great question, Melanie. So one of the things I like to teach is a timed free writing process where you kind of, you'll put a counter or a timer on your phone or wherever whatever type of timer you like to use. And you'll just allow yourself to write on a really focused topic for say 2 to 5 minutes, not super long, just enough to get yourself interested in an idea or even feeling what it's like to put words on the page. And I've seen free writes come through where it's like, I'm drinking my coffee. I don't know what to say. I'm really tired this morning, but here I am trying to write, and it's really just like kind of unpacking the internal monologue that's going on so that they can get to the ideas. And so often it's, we're trying to tap into the subconscious thinking as we're free writing so that we can really feel in the flow. And I think that that's my theory or my philosophy is that when you're doing your best writing, you are kind of tapping into your subconscious and just allowing the free flow of creativity to happen.
It usually happens after a good, maca, laca, whatever you drink from Starbucks, you get that caffeine buzz going and you're like, okay, I got all these ideas popping out of my head. That's one of our tips, right?
I love that. Hey, for the last question, I want to dive into your landing TV deals because, people watch all these wonderful TV shows on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and they're like Bridgerton and Pretty Little Lies, and all these were books, right? And Outlander and all these movies and TV shows were these amazing books. So how do you get that TV deal? Like, explain a little bit that process and what it really takes to get that.
Yeah, phenomenal question. Well, I think it starts with a great story. Of course, it starts with a great original story that, is not so bizarre and out there that producers can't see something accessible or familiar for their audience. So yes, it has to be original, but not so far outside the box that they don't know how to put their hands around it. So that's a thing. And I would say that, when it comes to fiction authors, we do need to think about what's trending right now. What are people interested in? Are they into dark stories? Like, for example, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic and many other different events around the world. And so we need to ask ourselves, what is the tone that, the US audience or other audiences might want to see? And so just being aware of those things can be really super helpful. And then when it comes to, actually writing the book, you want to be mindful of those aspects and again, target audience, but also making your voice stand out with what's already there. So don't try to be like somebody else and I think that's the benefit that I had is I really, was able to kind of write something distinct that was, feeling kind of Ray Bradbury or kind of a new Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451. But there was enough distance, for example, between my book and his books. He's a lot older and, than I was at the time. So it's a lot easier to kind of point to him and say, hey, it's kind of like this, but it's a new take. It's a fresh take. And I also can see parallels with what's happening in the market right now. So that always invites people to kind of take a look at your pitch and go, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, that's all part of setting up a good pitch and grabbing someone's attention.
Yeah, I like that. Great information. Tell us where everyone can reach out to you and connect with you, Ashley.
Yeah, so you can find me over at writingcoachla.com, and that's where you can grab a copy of my book, The Writer's Success Code. You can go ahead and download it for free. It's the #1 Amazon bestseller, and you can go ahead and grab that book and learn all about the TAP method and what it includes, get more detail, and there's some cool, worksheets and frameworks in there for you to use as well.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll put that link up at the bottom. And of course, go and grab her novel as well, Blood, Ink, and Fire. So go check that out on Amazon.
Love it. And then when you finish your book, then just contact us at Elite Online Publishing and we'll publish it for you and make it a #1 bestseller. So there you have it. Remember to subscribe to this podcast. We always have great information for you. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next time. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.